Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today on the show, I'm joined by Niels Walch, who's a Senior Vice President of HR Europe at Teva Pharmaceuticals. Welcome to the show, Niels. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be here.
To see you again. How have you been, first and foremost? How are you?
I'm more than okay. I'm excited to have this podcast with you, and and after a nice weekend, it's good to have the start of the week in this way.
Nice, fantastic. You probably need a rest, Niels, because unlike a lot of the other HR executives, or I suppose they've all been working obviously remotely, but you've been working. You've not left the office.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Of course, let's say. Priority number one is also for us following the guidance of governments, local governments. But let's say there was also our offices were always open, and so here in the Amsterdam office, I like to work because we are connected with 31 countries, and there should be anyway someone of the leadership team in the office to give people the possibility to be here, but also, let's say, following the guidelines which we had, and we still have. So I think it was a good combination of maybe a little bit selfish and making use of.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. You know, I love to work. I still continue to come in when I could in the office. Throughout, I get a lot more done. And I just kind of like being in the environment. Of course, there were certain periods where I had to be at home, of course. But I'm happy to be back. I'm sure, like many others, I'm happy to be back, and I know my wife's happy to be back working. She's probably happy. She's probably happy to get me out of the house, Niels.
Oh yeah. With me, it's the opposite. She thought that there would be more in the house, but I didn't.
Yeah, it's other way around. But before we go any further, Niels, tell everyone a little bit more about your background and your journey to where we are now.
Yeah, so I'm already a long time in HR with some side steps of being a little bit in the business and marketing and communications. I worked for a majority of the time in IT, ICT. I worked in transport. I grew up in HR, doing first all the specialist areas, and then becoming a generalist, and then a generalist for a country, and then I moved to international jobs. I worked for DHL, for Logica, for Unisys, and for Ordina. And I did also, let's say, I thought, okay, look, maybe I could cherry pick a little bit, and being more an independent consultant, worked as an interim. But look, I started in this company like Teva as an interim, but after a while you are part of the family, and you don't want to leave. And they didn't want me to go, so that was a nice win-win.
Yeah, because that doesn't happen as often as you think, right? And there's not many CHROs that I've spoken to that have had an interim role and then stayed full time. When did that point come in the role where you had that conversation? What did that look like? Did they approach you, or did you express that you were keen to stay? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I think, let's say, if I had the first time I had it with when I worked for European directories, the telephone hits. They said, okay, look, if you really, that was a boys' book. You start a business from scratch, etc., etc. It was bought, and then you have the choice if you could if you would like to stay, you have to leave your internship. And then the nice thing is and maybe that's the wrong thing of being an interim, is you see the opportunities and the challenges and with whom you have to do it, etc., etc. And that gives me always such a binding effect that I make the choice to stay if they ask. And it was the same in Teva. I started February 2009 and became on the payroll in September. And it was really fun. I went, maybe you know, Teva is an Israeli company, so I had to move to Tel Aviv. And to my surprise, because they had to discuss a couple of things with me, and to my surprise, they asked me to stay. And
Really?
and of course you have to think about it, and of course you have to play the game a little bit. But I was
Pay hard
really,
to get. Is that what you're saying? You got to pay hard to get.
you have to, I was really happy with it. I was really, because this is a great company to work for, and I think, let's say, the evidence is there, because I'm already 12 years, almost 12 years in the company.
Wow, it's been 12 years already.
Almost, yeah.
Wow, that's quite rare as well, right? It's not many HR professionals I'm speaking to now stay in the same role for more than 2-3 years now. It seems to be a kind of trend. Why do you think that is?
That was for me also, and I think for me it was always, let's say, if you have done it, then you should look for other things. And if there is other things are not in the same company, then go for it. Don't make yourself give yourself a hard time by staying because of all kind of good reasons maybe, but go for something else. And that's what I did always. And to be honest, it's in Teva the same, but you can find it in the company. So I started off being, let's say, more in the hire to retire area of HR for commercial. I'm now in I have the regional responsibility. On top of that, I'm the business partner for commercial. But if you look in the region, we have rounded maybe 18,000 FTEs of people working for us. The majority is in the factory, so we have the right combination, which I'm now, let's say, from an HR perspective, in the region feeling responsible for. You have them in R&D, you have them in commercial, you have them in the manufacturing, and of course the support functions. If you look at the years, we had three big acquisitions. So my life was always different, and so what is my driver is in that change, transformation, not an even path, and taking people by the hand, and take them on the journey to different places, and that's really fun, I would say.
Yeah. So I think it's, like, I think what I took away from what you said, as long as you're being challenged and you feel like you're growing and developing, then there's no need to look at other opportunities. If you can get that internally in the business, then why move? I see that very often in companies like, Unilever and Shell, the typical, organizations like that. They have long tenure, and it's like I always say, why did you stay? They say, Chris, I've had 13 roles in this business.
That's true, and that's absolutely true, and you see that also within the leadership team. And on the other hand, let's say, always you need to have the balance by saying, okay, look, one, you really need to be honest to yourself and say, did my time come now, or whatever. But I think, and on the other hand, as a company, should also be open, getting, let's say, fresh blood from outside in. And if you're continuing having that right mix in your organization, you are quite good, I would say. And we are.
And you are, clearly. I want to kind of more into current events, Niels, and get your perspective on, obviously, leading throughout this whole crisis to COVID. What are the main takeaways that you've taken away from this experience? And which of those takeaways have you now started to implement in your organizations? What are some of the changes that you're making?
Yeah, so if I'm looking at it a little bit more backwards, let's say it is really funny that one way or another it came as a surprise. So we knew that it would come, but it still was a surprise. So then you have to get your act together soon. And I think, let's say, that is what I told you just, is that we are, every time we are changing the company, we are doing acquisitions. We had heavy weather in 2017 where the company was almost bankrupt. So we know if it comes to, let's say, a sense of urgency, that we can easy and fast react. So I think we had our organization ready for managing it. So we had a global, what we are saying, situation room, where we are organizing everything from a global perspective and monitoring all the situations in the company. And then we had that, let's say, connected with the regional and with the local situation rooms. That is one. We're not looking at it from a business unit perspective in these countries, but really from a country perspective. And why I'm saying that, you have manufacturing, you have commercial, but from a COVID perspective, it's all the same. So you should also handle it as a one phase to your employees and one phase dealing with it from a country, regional and global perspective. That is what we did. We had our reporting up and running. And in that way, we also, what I think is important is the communication to your people. And I think we did very good in communicating and giving our people, which is also our first priority, ensuring that they have really a safe environment, and that they can be in a trustful way, if that is the right expression, coming to the office if needed. You have to our purpose is making medicines. It's important to continue with that. It's a priority. And so it's also that we need them to keep open our manufacturing sites. And we have two, 3 manufacturing sites in really critical environments, like in Italy. And we kept them open, and we give the people there a very safe environment, which is important. So that is, I think, it's important, and communicating about that and measuring it. We did poll surveys, pulse surveys, in which we, by the way, it was also nice that we measure it according to our values. And so we knew that we were on the right track for our values, but also we got a very, very good response of our employees, that they feel very protected and working in a very safe environment, which is important. So of course you changed dramatically your work patterns. Where we could, we work from home. Of course, that gives also a challenge if you have, let's say, on the same site, people working from home, but people have to go to the office, so you should keep in close contact with them. We had, where needed, we could make use of local hotlines, which were outside the company. You could rent that service to give people also from that perspective the right feeling that we are doing good. Yeah, and looking at it from a number perspective, I think in Europe, under let's say around 18,000 people, we had 200 cases, of which I think let's say 100 were suspected. So not only negative but suspected. So I think we did pretty well. And I think, let's say, one of the most important drivers from an employee perspective is our purpose. So people were really motivated and willing to do the extra mile, and they did it in also from a labor perspective in an environment which is protected. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. So because of people working from home, the canteen personnel you don't need them. So you have two ways. You can send them to home. You can terminate the contracts if they are on the payroll. But we really we communicated that we are not going to terminate contracts because of the situation where we are in. That gives a lot of security, job security.
Yeah, I love a few things based on what you mentioned, Niels. I love the fact that during all of this crisis, and I completely agree with you, the one thing we can always keep as our foundation is our purpose.
Yeah.
And when everything is still chaotic and going on out of your control, the one thing we can do is bring it back to our purpose. Yeah. And that was really something that really helped me and the team in our decision making through all of this. Is okay, we don't know where we're going, we don't have no one has the answers, but what we do know is, are these decisions aligned with our purpose and who we are as an organization? Yeah. Operating from there. So I love that point you just made, and it means employees and everyone, because it's easy to align with your purpose when everything's going well.
Yeah.
It's more important when things aren't going well that you stick to it as an organization and show that this isn't just letterhead, this isn't just words on the wall, but this is something we stand by as well. So
that's exactly what happens. So that is, if you can say, one of the the positive things out of this crisis, and that is that you really know now what drives people, and that is exactly what you're saying. That is purpose, that you manage the company according to values, and that you can show and prove to people that it's important to do. And then you see that people are doing really great things. There is a lot of creativity in the organization, and also if you have produced these medicines, they should move from one country to another country, or from one region to another region, with all the barriers we had regarding, let's say, orange, red, and whatever countries, and no movements, and getting the exceptions also from the European Commission to transport and distribute, etc., etc. That is really important, and give people also the possibility, because where people have the time, also that they could work as a volunteer, working in a pharmacy where they had their challenges, working in other ways as a volunteer, and we give people the possibility to do so. So really dedicated and to what happens, and in line with our purpose, I would say. So I don't hear you now.
Apologies, I muted myself.
That cannot be happening, yeah.
There was a bit of noise in the background in my office, so I just muted. Oh, sorry about that. What I was saying was, have you made any concrete decisions now and changes in terms of what your work policy looks like in terms of remote work? If so, could you share what that looks like?
Yeah, it's quite simple. But first is, I think we would like that people come to the office again. So we had already, before the crisis came, we had, let's say, a policy of 4 days in the office and 1 day from home.
So you already
we had that before, and we would like to continue. And you see, of course, in a new now, a lot of, you can read about, let's say, 40% of the companies continuing working from home, etc., etc. I think, from our perspective, it might be future-wise that we will give much more flexibility, but we would first like to have the people in the offices again, feeling that we are doing this as one thing, having the possibilities of face-to-face, and bring in practice then after what we have learned. And I think, let's say, moving from a crisis to working from home as at the other end of the spectrum, I think that's not good. I think that we really should get first your act together, learning. So from what went wrong. For example, I think you see now, and you read a lot about burnouts, stress, and whatever, because if you leave it as it is without any guidance of
systems, processes,
and processes, it's a madhouse.
Yeah, I've experienced that personally. If anyone listens, I've shared that on multiple podcasts where I experienced burnout. Niels, my anxiety started coming back. I had panic attacks because I was just working myself sick. Because I had my natural rhythm. When you're in an office, you have those daily rhythms, right? You have your lunch break together. You have those conversations around the water cooler, or when you're having a coffee. When you're at home, it seems to just, you don't stop working. That's what I've got a lot better now, and I'm sure people have. But I do agree that. But what would you say to the other people? Because on the other end of the spectrum, Niels, you've got another group of HR executives saying, and leaders saying productivity is through the roof. Productivity is at an all-time high. What would you say to those people?
No, I would say, look, I think if I'm looking at it, productivity is here in our company still good. If we are looking at the numbers, but I think what you see is that it might be that the efficiency and effectiveness is dropping a little. So we should watch that. And we should learn. That's the point. I think I prefer, if I would have the possibility to say, okay, let's go from left to right or whatever, I would say I prefer first to look at it from What did we learn from it? So if I'm looking at yourself, it's exactly what you see happening with yourself. Is I'm making much longer working hours, and I'm sitting behind the screen all day. And if I have, and after that, I still have to do a carload of emails, and everything is exploding one way or another. So I think, from my perspective, that cannot contribute to productivity. Mm-hmm. So then, what are then the rules of the game, and how are we going to develop them? So again, I think that is important for me to work first on. And on the other hand, let's say in HR land, maybe more recently, you see also a lot of articles popping up of the value of being in an office. And that's what I see. It's a trend now by saying, okay, let's move. But it's also, I think, it's starting off of a trend of valuing office. And I think if you do it gradually, you end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. And by the way, it's going to be different for different organizations and different people. Yeah. Everyone has their own different circumstances. Personally, my team's in the office today. However, we have other employees that are working from home full time.
Yeah.
We've just made it, depending on your situation, circumstances, we just have the flexibility. But what we found is most of our employees genuinely enjoy coming to work. And myself, Shane, James.
Exactly.
So I think now it's like giving people options and being flexible, as opposed to there's a one size fits all. That's clearly not going to work moving forward.
And so I think what is one of the most important things is that you are starting to agree on what are office hours. Because what you see is, if so, with all the respect, I'm an output manager, so I'm not looking at time in attendance. So if someone in my team would decide to say it's nice weather, I start at 6 o'clock in the evening, and start organizing all kinds of meetings and start his productivity from email perspective, he cannot expect, or she cannot expect, that someone else who has this office hours is responding on that. And if this person is responding on that, this person is continuing having lengthy working hours, and that is not good for your health.
Yeah, again, it changes by a role, right? If you're part of a team that's an international team, you have to be conscious of the hours people are working, and it's going to get a little bit more complex.
Absolutely.
We've set up specific rules within the technology that we have that actually gives you a message saying, Chris, are you aware that it's this time? And, Adam's not going to be working right now, right? So like we're using technology to help us be more mindful about those things. Otherwise, it can become, as you say, you can't expect someone at 8 p.m. at night just because you want to work then to be working as well. So I can see your point about getting everyone back into business, assessing where we are, and then building from there. I think that makes
and develop your technology accordingly. So take as an example with this working from home, and can I join the office, and is it okay, etc., because you have thresholds. Looking at your local guidance. So we developed an app, or we bought an app, but we made it tailor-made, so people can see who is in the office, which colleagues are there, is there a place for me, is there a spot, etc., etc. And we know that in that way we are managing our thresholds about how many people can be in the office. And that's one thing. But look, we were on the threshold, let's say, a couple of months ago for implementing Team. That is new, and we were still before that with Global Meet, and if you had an iPhone, you could also use FaceTime. So you are developing, and you speed up in a lot of things, and that's not only in being in contact with your employees and giving them the right infrastructure, but also I think we do big developments in how are we connecting with our stakeholders. So a sales force cannot knock at the door anymore by saying, "Here I am," what, etc., etc. So you cannot go to a hospital, you cannot go to the pharmacy or your GP or whatever. So we also are in high speed developing different ways of working, which is also, let's say, looking at different capabilities, and that everything in the pressure cooker to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. What about from a cultural perspective, Niels? Because
from
a cultural perspective. So, for example, if someone's joining Teva as an organization, and I'm sure you've thought about this and many others, how do you build culture when people have never worked in the organization and now are working remote? How do they become part of the Teva culture? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so I think it's by the way, it's for me, it was also not, take first as an example, I had to recruit an HR director in Italy, and so we signed and sealed the contract before I haven't seen her. Mm-hmm. So I travel now a little bit. Let's say, by the way, Wednesday I also have to go to Milano, and I first saw the person after, which is quite quite a difference. But looking culturally and keep things together is, of course, we measured it through our pulse survey, where people could give also advice and how we could develop in a better way. I think what we did with the health and well-being program, so we launched it, let's say, in I think, let's say, a very beneficial time for because people work from home. We had a lot of programs running, but what we did was it only local. So what we did now, for example, what we have local, we developed it in such a way that we could roll it out for the region where we're working. So give you an example, I was running this weekend the Einstein Marathon, which is a marathon which is organized in Ulm in Germany. The German team is running it, and they, because of this health well-being program, we said, okay, look, can we make it more regional? So we did, and I think, let's say, from that perspective, I think outside Germany, maybe 600-700 employees were running the marathon in their own country and environment, with, let's say, the same purpose and having been connected to this Einstein. I think that's what we learn. If we are going for stress management, we have nice programs which we can share, which can people do from home or doing, let's say, if they are with a group. But we give, let's say, very simple guidance, and it's already proved. It proved already that it works, because it was already developed for a country, and we are making them now more regional. And that works really, really, really well. And we get feedback, because I think it's also, you need to find ways of creating a new way of that people can respond on things, and being open for that and encouraging them to do. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and they connect, right? So going back to my question about culture,
connecting.
Yeah, that's something that brings everyone together across regions, across countries, across the world.
There are also still simple things. I do a lot of my, if I see an email chain and the email chain is longer than 3-4 emails, I'm calling. And
I'm the same, by the way.
It's the most simple way of doing it, to stop the email chain and having a nice conversation with someone, instead of let it go back and forth by email. So I think that is still a very good medium which works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
when you in terms of the area you work within, pharmaceuticals obviously is very competitive in terms of the talent that you're going past. How do you make sure that Teva stands out? Why should talented people join Teva? What is it about?
No, I would look. I think it's always great to work for a company which has a great purpose, and that's what we have. Improving a patient's life, etc., etc. That is one. Then, secondly, I think we are really a global operating company. I think we really are in every country in the world almost. We have manufacturing, we have commercial, We have really global support. We have R&D, etc., etc. And you can work on that on a local level, and you can work on an international level. You can move from one country to another if you would like. So I think, let's say, we have a high level of mobility. We have programs for that. We have really a great way of learning on the job, because I think still 70% of what people are learning, they do on the job. And we have really great programs. And also now we are developing and also learning from that more the remote programs for managers, senior managers, etc., etc. So I think purpose and I think also from a perspective, if you really start, if you step here over the threshold, over the doorstep, you will come in a company which is encouraging you to do, of course, the extra mile, is also rewarding you for that, but also is thinking out of the box. And if you have great ideas, the question will always be, why are you not implementing them then? And so I think it's a great company. I think we have low, if you would add the numbers, really low voluntary attrition, also before COVID. And I think if you went through these crises where we have gone through, and having this high level of loyalty in the company, I think we are doing something really great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're testimony to that yourself. You've been there quite long now, so right,
yeah.
To keep you there. Do you think that now, given on this point, given the virtual elements of the work now, do you think this has opened up a whole new talent pool for you and the team?
Yes, we are thinking about that, because if you look, what I'm saying about working from home and whatever, there is a lot of positive on it. If you look, working from home gives opportunities in your inclusion and diversity agenda, but also it gives a different way of looking at mobility. So if we would say to a talent person, we would like to hire you, but you have to go to Amsterdam, etc., etc. So it might be in the future that we don't have that kind of mobility anymore, but saying, okay, look, stay in Zagreb or stay in whatever, and we have our network and the entertainment around it in that way, that the person is feeling connected to the company. And of course, if there is travel, the person can travel. But it gives also, let's say, opportunities for us to people which are less mobile.
Yeah. No, I think last time we spoke, that was something you were very passionate about.
Yeah.
The diversity and inclusion point of view, and not just your contribution to the environment as well. Two areas that I know you're very, very passionate about. So that does open up opportunities.
It gives great opportunities. And look, people have different stages in their life, and if you can adopt that in your way of working, that would be great. And of course, let's say it is also asking something different from our leaders, our managers. So of course, let's say it's already, let's say, not new, but let's say more output management, more how do you do your performance if you don't see these persons every day? How do you do your performance reviews? How do you keep them motivated? How do you get track on them with not calling them everyone? So you really, it's really a change where we are in a learning phase still, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot. That was a great point. Performance reviews. I'm interested to see how that plays out over the next few years, or even next year, to be honest, of what that looks like. Because so many people, it's used to, you kind of see everyone sitting down. So you're like, I know Chris is working. I can see him working. What does that look like?
Yeah, what does it look like? So I think if I look at Chris, I can see that he is working, and I'm not. But I think I cannot see what he is doing.
Output.
So that's the output. So I think the output is how I can give the right definition to output, where you can measure it, where you can discuss it, and whatever. And that's becoming more and more important.
Yeah. Even with my small team, that's something I struggled with, Niels, in the beginning, which we've got some systems in place. Whereas, if I was, for example, with the creative team, I could go over to them and they would show me on their screen, this is what projects, this is what goes in. So when we was on lockdown, I had no idea what the team was working on because I couldn't physically come and see. So we had to put some systems and processes in place and our workflows to be like, okay, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, so I can actually measure the output as well. There's a small business that was tough. So I can only imagine.
And Chris, sometimes it's difficult, but I think it's important to show trust.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's an open door, but I think, let's say, if you look at companies, everything from a reporting perspective in a lot of cases is not built and developed on trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there it starts with, if you don't trust your people working from home, that they are doing what you would like them to do, etc., then forget it.
Forget everything else. Yeah. What, before I jump into our quick fire round, Niels, I want to ask you about, what about you personally? How has this impacted you? Forget about the business for a moment. Niels, managing through this time. I know when we first spoke a long while back, I think you were flying on a plane twice a week to different locations. And now obviously that's cut down significantly. But just personally, how have you managed through this? How has it been on you?
No, you have to adopt. There is no choice, and I think also that is the learning. As long as there is a choice, you say, okay, look, I jump in the plane and then I will be there, etc., etc. And maybe you are less critical. Although I think, let's say, it was in a time that I think I had to fly a lot. But I think it learns also now to be more critical because you have to. So the time that I'm flying is really needed. And I think I also adopt a new way of working. I think what I didn't thought of myself, that I could create also a kind of intimacy in this way of having, let's say, contact with my people, and that has, of course, you need to have, let's say, you have to practice, but I think it feels sometimes that we were in the same room, and that is what you have to learn. And in some cases you never get there, but look, everyone. And I'm happy. And I'm happy as a child, let's say that I'm going on Wednesday, going to the airport and jump in the plane, and of course with your face mask, and but have and looking forward to have some good meetings in Italy.
Yeah, you're right. It is something you learn. Like I say this all the time to my podcast guests. I've been doing this, Niels, for about 3 years. This show, and some of the guests that I've had, I feel like I've never. I feel like when I meet them face to face, I feel like I've always known them.
Yeah.
Even only interacted virtually through LinkedIn Lives or podcasts or Zoom calls. It is a skill, and but at the same time, I also think you probably, as you said, you probably surprised yourself at how you can have such meaningful relationships virtually. I don't think it will replace face to face. You can't replace that, I personally believe, but you can definitely build meaningful relationships virtually. And get to know people as well. But so, did you say you missed the flying, or do you feel a bit more?
No, look. I think, like I said, what my learning is I think you should first have a look what is much more maybe critical.
Yeah. Can I do this?
Yes. And now and during this crisis, of course, you learned much more using other ways of being in contact. So, so give an example. I had to go for a court case. Don't worry, in Austria, so we said, okay, look, but if I have to be there, why can we not do it remote? And of course, let's say it's not that also a court is used to that, but they accepted it, and they will be there with their laptops in the court. And I will be there remote for, let's say, maybe half an hour max. And otherwise, I had to fly for a whole day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I was asking that for other reason. Again, was more about your personal well-being. because many leaders that I speak to, HR leaders through this, are forgetting to put on their own oxygen mask first. So how have you made sure that you look after Niels before anyone else?
I would say for me, it has the only thing is my driver from that perspective. If I would not do this with a lot of fun, that is my oxygen. And so it has nothing to do with the travel. The travel is, for me, it's really exciting to go for a team, to meet a team in Poland, and a day maybe later to discuss things with a team in Spain, having the discussions, etc., etc. So from my perspective, it was not exhausting me at all.
I didn't mean the flying. Sorry, I didn't mean the flying was exhausting. I meant just this dealing with COVID. Dealing with
COVID. Look, okay.
The flying part. In general, leading through this time is not easy, right? Let's be honest.
No, it's not easy, and I think you get more. I would say not. I don't want to use the word exhausted, but I think sometimes you had enough, and you have to watch that. So I think in between, you need to walk in the office or go for a chat with someone who is in the office or call someone. I think watching yourself is if you look. I know if I'm going over the top. I know. So it's also listening to your own body and saying, okay, now it's enough. Now you need to do something. I'll switch off and doing other things. Is that? But I did it every time already. So that's why it was a little bit. Let's say I was looking where you're referring to this flying and whatever, which some people say is crazy.
It is a lot.
It's a lot, but also it is. It's now.
You said you for me it will be a lot, but I can complete your perspective. It's completely different. You're excited to go and meet the team in Poland. You're excited to because you love it. It's your purpose. It's what you do. It's your why. So
that's I think, let's say, if you go for this, you need to watch yourself, of course. But I think one of the big drivers is the why. Why are we doing this? Your purpose. I think what we are doing is giving people in our company a good place to work. Yeah. I think it's important that you look at, let's say, how many people we are using our medicines. That is a way of looking at it. So I think, let's say, the learning is you always need to find, and maybe they're small, by saying, okay, this is my purpose for today. This is the big purpose, making things a little bit, let's say, touchable, and then you will not getting exhausted, but you will get excited and continuing being excited what you do.
Love it. Well, look, before we wrap up, Niels, I want to jump into our quick fire round. I do this with each guest. You won't. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers per question, right? So first question, what was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a successful HR executive? What was the biggest challenge you faced?
I think the big challenge was still the balance between private and work at that time, because I love my private life. I do a lot of things. It's of course family, but it's also at that time playing DJ, doing a lot of, let's say, creativity, trying to find there your living, and stop that. And doing something different. I think, let's say, that is, that's important. What's important for me is continuing being important. 5 seconds.
You found a good balance now?
Absolutely.
Great. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I think that is still the way I work. Is HR is not a self-fulfilling prophecy. HR is there for support to employees and to the business. So you should be in the middle. You should not be an admin. You really should be open and talking and advising and challenging your business leaders and your employees.
Mm-hmm. In terms of kind of your own reading, what's what's one book you'd recommend to anyone?
Yeah, so some people get fed up with it, but I'm always recommending, hey, look, have you read already Ricardo Semler, Maverick? I think it's a great book. I think it is out of the 80s. It's still maybe the language is a little bit maybe more old-fashioned, but it is so up to date, and it gives so many learnings to everyone, to managers, to HR, etc., etc.
What's the one thing that you took away from the book? What was your biggest takeaway?
Empowering others instead of every time thinking of them. Look, I can give you, if you have one great example, which is you tend as a management team to make a decision about everything. I'm now looking at the book. This guy was chairing it as a CEO, and they were talking about the decoration of one of the manufacturing sites. So there was a lengthy discussion. He said, look, why should we do this? This is not our way of looking. We should ask the people who in the manufacturing site to have a view on that and give them a budget to do. So they figured it out. They came to him and say, look, we thought how many it costs to do it by a professional. So we have to decide to do it in the weekend. And they decided also about their own colors. The only thing is what he didn't like were the colors, but they did it by themselves. And I think this is maybe a simple example, but you can find lengthy of these examples in the book. Having people in a company were, let's say, freed up for work to think about future. We are thinking that but give them the time to think about it. He was the guy who said, look, I'm here and to organize in such a way that every day I'm less in the company, the better. So that is a high level of delegation and empowering people. So I think the book is full of that.
Yeah, it's probably one of the biggest lessons I had to learn when I first became a leader was to delegate. So
absolutely.
Many people, it's hard to let go, but then when you realize you let go and you empower people and you realize the result you get, and they get more and more engaged, they get more and more confident, and then you can grow together. What about online resources? Kind of what's on the browser, Niels? You know, what are some of the online websites, kind of publications? Where's your go-to? What are some of the go-to?
Yeah, so of course I'm as everyone is doing is making use of LinkedIn. In the broader sense, but I'm also making use of Gartner and specialist sites which are, let's say, publishing a lot. That's a little bit, let's say, what I would say I'm using. I can use more, but it's also time consuming. It's a little bit, so that's the point. You step in something, and then you find another article, and then you find this, and before you know, it's comparable with this plate of peanuts which you get in front of you, and you start eating, and someone is filling it every time.
yeah. Too many options. And then last question: what's one thing about the organization, Niels, about Teva Pharmaceuticals that you're most excited about?
No, I would. Of course, it's our purpose, which I'm excited about. But I think, let's say, if I personally also would be, I'm really a change guy. I like not having the stable environment. Stable environments will never be in employer land anymore, or company land. So we had a lot of change. We had a lot of transformations. We had a lot of acquisitions and integrating it. And that's what I really like, is that change, that transformation, and taking the people by the hand on that journey. Yeah.
Love it. Well, if you like change and transformation, you're in the right seat.
I am.
You want to work in HR, that is definitely something you need to think about. Not everyone's cut out for it, and we've seen that.
And if you say, look, that's a little bit, let's say, how I work, how I preach the way we work, empowering people. I also have really, really a very good team, a great team, which is doing things in the same way, empowering others, having, let's say, the agenda on top of the things. And especially now, if you look to this pandemic, they are on top of everything, very focused and very, let's say, I would like to trust everyone, and they are the most reliable people you can work with.
Amazing. Well, look, Niels, thanks so much for taking the time out. It was a real pleasure to chat with you. I'm so happy we made this.
It was a pleasure, Chris. Yeah.
I appreciate that. For everyone listening on LinkedIn, thank you for joining us throughout.
Thank you.
We forgot about you, but I'm sorry. But thanks for listening. I promise we'll get back to you at some point.
Okay,
appreciate you joining. If you're new to the show, please like, comment, share. We want to share this experience with as many people as possible. Head over to hrleaders.com/subscribe. You can choose your favorite platform. Apart from that, enjoy your rest of your day. And thanks again, Niels. And I'll see you all again soon.
You're welcome.
Bye for now, Niels.
Okay. Bye-bye, Chris. Bye.